So, the year is 2016. A gorilla by the name of Harambe sadly died. The WWE was having one of its greatest years. XSL had one of its best freshman class. Lil Uzi Vert dropped the song Buy It. And the NBA had one of its greatest seasons. So now let's take a look around the league. Starting off with the Western Conference. I'm going to start off from the bottom, working my way up to the top. So, the 15th seed was the Los Angeles Lakers. This Lakers team had a record of 17-65. But surprisingly, it wasn't the worst team in the league that year. But let's get into that a bit later. Moving on to the 14th seed. The 14th seed being the Phoenix Suns. This Phoenix Suns team had a record of 23-59. Things were not looking good for them, but let's move on to the 13th seed. The 13th seed being the Timberwolves. This Timberwolves team went 29-53. But now let's look at the 12th seed. The 12th seed being the New Orleans Pelicans. With the Pelicans having a record of 30-52. The 11th seed was the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets had a record of 33-49. The 10th seed was the Sacramento Kings. The Kings also had a record of 33-49. The 9th seed was the Jazz, with the Jazz team going 40-42. Now we get into the playoff teams. The 8th seed was the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets went 41-41 this year. The 7th seed was the Memphis Grizzlies. This Grizzlies team went 42-40. The 6th seed was the Mavs. The Mavs also being 42-40. The 5th seed was the Portland Trailblazers. Trailblazers having a record of 44-38. The 4th seed was the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers had a record of 53-29. The 3rd seed was the OKC Thunder. The Thunder had a record of 55-27. The 2nd seed was the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs having a 67-15 record. And the number 1 seed in the West was the Golden State Warriors, with this team having a 73-9 record, that being the best record in NBA history. But now let's move on to the East. The 15th seed in the East was the Philadelphia 76ers. This Philadelphia team went 10-72, that being the worst record in the NBA. But let's not sit too much of them and go to the 14th seed. The 14th seed was the Nets. The Brooklyn Nets had a record of 21-61. The 13th seed was the Knicks. The Knicks had a record of 32-50. The 12th seed was the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks had a record of 33-49. The 11th seed was the Orlando Magic. I don't like the Magic, so I'm not going to say their record. The 10th seed was the Washington Wizards. The Wizards had a record of 41-41. The 9th seed was the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls had a record of 42-40. And now it's time to look at the East playoff teams. For the 8th seed was the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons was 44-38. The 7th seed was the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers having a record of 45-37. The 6th seed was the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte Hornets had a record of 48-34. The 5th seed was the Boston Celtics. Boston Celtics also had a record of 48-34. The 4th seed was the Atlanta Hawks, who also had a record of 48-34. The 3rd seed was the Miami Heat, who again had a record of 48-34. The number 2 seed was the Toronto Raptors, who had a record of 56-26. And the number 1 seed was the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland Cavaliers have a record of 57-25. All right, now let's talk about some other things that happened during this season. Like I said earlier in this video, the Warriors had a record of 73-9, which is the best record in NBA history. But some other fun things happened during this season. The 2016 dunk contest was great. Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon were just going at it. The 3-point contest was also great. Kevin Hart was showing out. And of course, the All-Star game. This All-Star game being Kobe's last. It also was a great game, with Westbrook winning All-Star game MVP. Another thing about this regular season was Kobe's last. In the Kobe final game, he dropped 60 points. And at the end of the game, he said one of his most famous quotes.
Say, Mamba out.
And also during the season, Steph Curry had an amazing game against OKC, where he hit some crazy shots during this game. But now let's move to the playoffs. Let's first look at the West playoffs. The first playoff series I'm going to start off with is the Spurs versus the Grizzlies. In this run, the second seeded Spurs were able to beat the Grizzlies in 7. But now let's look at the OKC versus the Dallas series. In this series, the OKC was able to beat the Mavs in 5. And now they head to the second round where they'll play the San Antonio Spurs. The next playoff series is the Clippers versus the Portland Trailblazers. The Trailblazers were able to get rid of the Clippers in 6 games. And now they advance to the second round. And the final first round series in the West is the Golden State Warriors versus the Houston Rockets. In this round, the Golden State Warriors were able to get rid of the Rockets in 5. Now they head to the second round where they'll play the Portland Trailblazers. So now let's talk about the Western Conference second round playoffs. Starting off with the OKC versus Spurs series. In this series, the Spurs were able to get 2 wins off the OKC Thunder. But sadly, ended up losing the series in 6. And now the OKC Thunder advanced to the Western Conference Finals. Now let's look at the Blazers versus Warriors series. In this series, the Golden State Warriors were able to beat the Blazers in 6. Now they head to their second Western Conference Finals in a row. So, the matchup is set. The Golden State Warriors played the OKC Thunder in the Western Conference Finals. After the first 4 games, the OKC Thunder was up 3-1 in the series. And now they look like they'll make their second NBA Finals. But in game 5 through 7, the Warriors were able to beat them, meaning the Thunder would lose 3 straight games. And now the Golden State Warriors head to the NBA Finals, which is their second time in a row. But now let's see what's going on over there in the East. Alright, so the first series we'll start off with is Raptors versus the Pacers. This series was a very close fight, but at the end the Raptors came out in 7. Now let's move on to the next series, which is the Heat versus the Hornets. It was another very close series. In Game 7, the Heat was able to beat the Hornets. Now let's move on to the next series, which is the Hawks versus Celtics. In this series, the Hawks were able to beat the Celtics in 6 games. And now the final first round series for the East, the Cavs versus the Pistons. In this round, the Cleveland Cavaliers were able to sweep the Pistons. And now we head over to the second round. So, the first second round series I'm going to look at is the Heat versus the Raptors. This series was another very close series. But at the end, the Raptors came out in 7 games. And now they head to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now let's look at the other second round matchup, which is the Cavs versus the Hawks. It was another easy series for the Cavs. Getting rid of the Hawks in 4 games and now advances to the Eastern Conference Finals. And the matchups are set, the Cavs versus the Raptors. And in this round, the Cavs were able to get rid of the Raptors in 6, and now they advance to the NBA Finals for the second time in a row. So, the final matchup is set, the Cavs versus the Warriors. So now let's get into Game 1. In Game 1 of the NBA Finals, the Warriors was able to beat the Cavaliers 104-89 and now go up 1-0 in the series. And now let's head to Game 2. In Game 2, the Warriors will again beat the Cavaliers, with the score being 110-77, and now they go up 2-0 heading into Cleveland. And in Game 3, the Cavs were able to get their first win of the series, with the score being 120-99, and now they're only down 2-1 in the series. But in Game 4, they were sadly come up short again, with the score being 108-97, and now the Warriors are up 3-1 in the series. And now it is Game 5. In Game 5, the Cavaliers will win the game, 112-97, which means they push it to a Game 6. And in Game 6, the score was 113-101, with the Cavs winning. And now it's time for Game 7. In Game 7, the Cavaliers will pull off the 3-1 comeback, with the score being 93-89, and now it puts an end to this great season. I think this season was the best season of all time. So many great memories and moments. But hey, that's all I got for this video. If you liked it, I think you should like and sub. I mean, it's only fair, right? But that's all I got for this video. I'm out.